To a story from digital to bricks and mortar. Marc Wachsberger is the founder and chief executive of Capital Hotels and Apartments. Two big announcements in the last week or so. The first, the acquisition of the hotel at Zimbali at a knockdown price, and then the signing of a 7-year lease on a property in Cape Town, a property called 15 on Orange. As international hotel operators have lost their appetite for South Africa, Marc Wachsberger, the local guy, is seeing an opportunity. Let's talk Zimbali first here, Mark. This was built for the 2010 World Cup at a cost of about 600 million rand. This is in 2010 money. You're buying it for 230 million rand. That sounds like you've got yourself a deal.
Yeah, hi, Bruce. Thanks for having me on the show. I think what's happened is we followed the business rescue process, and the bidders, of which there were 8, I think the price was ultimately determined by the ability to raise funding. Raising funding is incredibly tough when, even before COVID, hotels battled to raise funding. To now raise funding in a COVID environment without a track record, with funders saying, well, what's going to happen, and all the ifs and buts, that actually is what I think determined the price at the end and why we were the highest bidder.
The mere fact that there were 8 people interested enough to make a pitch for this business, I think, is quite encouraging about the future. It's very hard to see the future right now based on COVID, based on lockdowns, based on the uncertainty of vaccine rollouts, all of these things which certainly cloud the future. What gives you the confidence to expand your hotels and conferencing reach into a property like Zimbali?
Well, I think I'm not the only one. There were 8 others, and I think there'd be many more included in your audience who believe in South Africa, who believe in the recovery of the hotel sector, who think that COVID is a flash in the pan, 1 to 3 years of impact versus, property that in that location will be 30, 40, 50 years, hopefully even longer. So I think there's a lot of us who believe in it, and we believe in the recovery. And as I've said to you, it's actually just more about the ability to raise funding than the belief itself. For me, it's an absolute no-brainer. And we've always been known to buy in the bad times, and times couldn't be worse.
And that's the point, though. But it gives you a sense of that visibility, and you're choosing to look through the noise. And South Africa's got a long history of founders of businesses, great South African businesses, that have looked through the noise, from Nando's to Discovery to Bidvest and many, many others. All companies started in the darkest times of South African history that have persisted through, but very few have had the sort of bricks and mortar physical nature of hotels. Hotels are a different game because you are taking long-term bets.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we have to be very careful that we watch our risk and watch our downsides. And the best way to watch your downside is that someone else has already effectively had the downside. So, it's an unfortunate situation that Zimbali and the creditors are in, and I feel quite upset for them about it. The reality for us is we would never be able to do the deal at any kind of higher price, because then there is downside, and then our funding wouldn't follow. So we always design and build our hotels backwards, saying what will the client pay, run it through a model equals how much we can afford to build it for. And that's true here in regard to how much we would buy it for. And that gives us the downside protection and the confidence for our shareholders.
I mean, one looks at the time value of money, and the money was worth a lot more 11 years ago than it is today. And if we built this hotel in 2010 for 600 million, surely to replace it would be R1 billion cost plus. I know it's insured for less, but the point is you're buying an asset at a third to a quarter of what it would cost you to build it. Talk to me about 15 on Orange. It's a premium property in Cape Town, in Oranjezicht in Cape Town, very near to the Mount Nelson. Very similar in look and feel and flavor, perhaps, as your Capital hotels are.
Yes, exactly. That's why we're interested. And Cape Town, it's been incredibly hard to get into. We've only got 70 rooms at the Capital Mirage versus 150 rooms coming up in Nelspruit versus 1,400 rooms in our entire portfolio. So 70 rooms was far too small. But try as we might for the last 5 years, we couldn't get into Cape Town. Land was either over expensive, wouldn't have worked in that model I just described of designing our hotels backwards. There were no acquisition opportunities, and that's why, this COVID call it second wave actually, is what got the opportunity to finally buy. In the first wave, people were very confident still that it would be short. The second wave has allowed us an entry into Cape Town in a hotel that we've always really had our eye on it, to be honest.
I mean, the reality is that in negative times, people do fall by the wayside. Companies fail. People lose their shirts. It is a really awful time. But it's in those times where courageous investors do put a stake in the ground. And you've chosen this moment in order to do it. Does that give you some sort of great predictive view of the future? Or is it just simple economics and cyclical economics? You just believe that history teaches us that the future is better than the past?
Yes, so historically, 7-year cycles have been the norm of the hotel sector. Everyone builds all at once. Think 2010 World Cup, everyone builds all at once. Then there's an oversupply, and then years later, there's an undersupply. There's a shortage again. I think there is a shortage. There have not been enough hotels built since that undersupply of 11 years ago. So for me, it's cyclical economics, but we all know that the history is not the future. And one is still taking a big bet, because if you only bet on history repeating itself, you're doomed for failure.
So what gives you the confidence? Give me that last one, and then I'll let you go.
Well, what gives me the confidence is that we still have those downside protections, even if we're wrong. So we're not betting the bank on this. We're not betting absolutely everything on these two deals. We're predicting a third wave. If it doesn't come, that's a bonus. If it comes, then we're ready for it. So we're only confident in that there's further de-risking measures. We're not overconfident in this environment.
There we go, Marc Wachsberger. Thank you very much indeed. He is the chief executive and the founder of Capital Hotels and Apartments. 2 big deals announced in the last couple of weeks. Bricks and mortar investment in the future.